For more on this, we're also now being joined by our correspondent Susan Teherani live from New York. Also joining us on this broadcast will be Nicole Berner-Schmitz. Thank you so much for joining us. Susan, coming to you first. Trump has, of course, pleaded not guilty. What can you tell us?
So in the courtroom, there were 34 counts, each for an individual business record. For example, invoice to former fixer Michael Cohen, reimbursement for checks, ledger entries that weren't correct. But these all describe the same conduct. Bragg hasn't really answered the question on what the second crime is. And this is going to be something that Donald Trump's lawyers will be arguing moving forward. And they seem to be very upbeat and very not to use the word happy, but very optimistic that this indictment and arraignment won't even go to trial. Notably for this reason that we don't know what this second count is. And Alvin Bragg was given this opportunity to answer really what is this second count of crime. And again, during the press conference, he referred again to the indictment, which was very unclear and vague. And he really does owe it to the public after dragging all of us through the indictment of a former president and all of this spectacle that we saw to give us a concrete answer, but we still don't know what that other crime is. And then, on the other hand, he talks about other issues regarding campaign finance laws.
Right.
These are all misdemeanor charges. Again, we have to see what that other crime is. So a lot of legalities going into this. You played former President Trump's speech at Mar-a-Lago. It really did seem more like a campaign speech than anything else. And we'll have to wait and see how this unfolds.
Right, absolutely, Susan. Just going across to Nicole Berner-Schmitz, political analyst from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. Now, of course, this is a legal setback for Donald Trump, but would you say that politically he is now using this to energize supporters?
I mean, he is certainly doing that. And look, he has a base that is going to rally around him. But what we need to remember is that this base is not an electorate that's going to send him to the White House. This is not the majority of Americans. It's a large part of the Republican Party. It's not the Democrats and it's not the independents. And you have a Republican Party that is finding themselves in a bit of a crisis right now because you do have leaders like Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and others who do not want Trump to continue to be the candidate for the White House or the de facto leader of the Republican Party. And what they really are hoping is that they can find a way to have another candidate emerge out of this primary and be their candidate who runs against Joe Biden in 2024. But this is going to play right to Donald Trump and what his natural tendencies are, which is to throw out huge bravado and loud statements that have absolutely no factual basis and instill fear in a lot of people, and give them someone to blame for whatever they're angry about or frustrated about in their lives right now, but not giving any kind of actual policy solutions or a path forward as to how he would, actually make America and improve anything here. But this is what Donald Trump does. This is what he did in 2016. Unfortunately, now Americans have seen what 4 years of his leadership is, and they soundly rejected that in 2020. There's no reason to think after the successful presidency of Joe Biden that we will do any different in 2024.
Right. Susan, just coming back to you for more clarity on this, what would you say is the general consensus with regards to this case, and how do you see this panning out going forward?
Right. Well, as Nicole mentioned, there is really an identity crisis within the Republican Party. However, when it comes to this one case, because it's so flimsy in New York, and it's the first case, I think Republicans have rallied around Donald Trump. And it's also to the benefit of President Biden, who's really seeing his poll numbers the lowest that they've ever been right now, because the nation right now is focusing on Donald Trump and his legal battles as opposed to focusing on the problems that the country has, that Joe Biden has caused for them. So it's somewhat a gift to the president and his party and the White House as well. But these are short-term gains for the president. We'll have to see whether or not they'll be long-term, considering the fact that this is just the beginning. This one case may not go to trial, may be thrown out, but then there are a slew of other cases regarding the Mar-a-Lago documents, the classified documents, and others that might be more serious. And what that will do is perhaps maybe create some baggage for the former president, where if he does become the nominee for 2024, then independent voters and those who decide in the general will have fatigue that he has too much baggage. But I think that's, something that we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. For the time being,
Right.
This is something that has played to the benefit of Donald Trump and for many Republicans as well, because they could really play on this and, talk about how the justice system was really being politicized.
Right. Now, Nicole, coming to you, you heard what Susan just said, that these will be short-term gains for the president. Also, as Alvin Bragg mentioned earlier, that it's not just about one payment, it's 34 false statements in business records. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. This is a short-term game. Then, it's taking up our whole world right now, but this is not the next 2 years. And I think that there is a concern amongst, at least quietly behind the scenes from Democrats, that maybe this wasn't the first case that should have gone out there. The classified records that were found at Mar-a-Lago is potentially a much bigger case and a much more challenging legal problem for the former president. So I think this is the beginning of his legal woes. And I think that there's people in the Republican Party within their leadership that also kind of hope this gets on top of each other and the legal troubles continue to mount, so that they can have someone else to turn to in the 2024 primary and emerge. But right now, that Republican grassroots, they're not abandoning the former president, and it's hard to see someone taking over in that primary. But we have a long road ahead until the primaries in 24.
All right. Nicole and Susan, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. We will, of course, continue to track the developments very closely.
Thanks.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.